Right, hello there, my name's Corvus, and today we're talking about ludonarrative dissonance.
Welcome to a Super Mario Odyssey series, where we'll take a look at each and every kingdom, examining the captures, the moons, the mechanics, the level design, the bosses, you name it, and how everything is expanded upon, utilized, and realized. If this exhaustive analysis sounds right up your alley, then strap right in, cause this'll be pretty neat. Firstly, because I'm nuts and I like nuts, I'll be examining each and every moon in Odyssey. We'll lay some groundwork regarding moons and the controversy surrounding their saturation, placements, and overall use, and then we'll take a look at the moons in an attempt to improve them, remove them, or A-OK them. We'll look at as many elements surrounding moons as possible throughout this series. The level design, the captures, the platforming, the challenges, the laughs, smiles, frowns, and clowns. Secondly, we can all have fun with well-designed or poorly designed games. I can't quantify fun, nor can I argue it objectively. Whether you have fun with Odyssey or not, I hope this series will be a fun, entertaining, and joyful experience and journey for everyone involved. Super Mario Odyssey has quite the reputation, so I want to make sure everyone is on the same page by establishing some groundwork here for the upcoming exhaustive series. There's rhyme and reason to why the moons are an attractive system to many people, and so in this episode, we will discuss Odyssey's reward system before moving into our first kingdom analysis. First off, reward systems are crucial in game design. In fact, rewards and how and when they're delivered are significant factors in what maintains or doesn't maintain a player's interest. Moons are Odyssey's primary reward, and act as fuel for Mario's airship. 124 out of the total 880 moons are needed to finish the game. This was purposeful because of the moons' inflation and how they're an all-in-one overabundant reward given out for everything. After all, the consequence of exploring, capturing, or engaging in the gameplay in any manner is moons. There are three types of moons: objective moons, which are moons that the game actively provides an objective for; sub-area moons, of which each sub-area contains two; and what I dub as worldly moons, which are the majority of the moons and are scattered around both the kingdom and in our path to objective moons. What this means is we're collecting worldly moons as we're progressing toward each objective moon. After however many objective moons, we want to explore and collect some worldly moons. So we're collecting moons while heading toward a moon, and then we deviate from the railroaded moons to collect moons. This constant moon feedback devalues them. We can also see this regarding multi-moons given out for completing boss fights. A multi-moon is not a unique reward, it's 3 moons stapled together. This only further perpetuates this devaluation of Odyssey's primary collectible. In addition, moons don't serve any function outside of airship fuel that unlocks new kingdoms on the level select screen. They don't serve to provide upgrades, unlock new areas and kingdoms, or provide new gear that offers more traversal options, as just a few examples. There's no definitive reason or incentive for collecting moons outside of the minimum requirements, but even then, that quickly becomes irrelevant due to the low number of required moons that almost never play a factor in how we complete objectives and grab worldly moons. Finally, the moons' value could be found in the gameplay that precedes the reward. Unfortunately, the gameplay is often not valuable on its own, as we'll discuss throughout this series. But what about the purple coins? Oh, that's a great point, Corvus, thank you. Purple coins are a great collectible and reward for exploring kingdoms. However, they're also used in access. These purple coins, for instance, are only several meters away from where the Odyssey lands. They don't require exploration. Now take these purple coins that require us to explore the kingdom with a capture. Purple coins can be a great reward, and they certainly add to Odyssey's reward system, but they also devalue themselves. In either case, Odyssey places a heavy emphasis on moons as its all-in-one primary reward, although we will definitely discuss purple coins during our journey. Now that we've established that moons hold little value, why do people actively seek out moons and find them enjoyable? because moons are constant, reliable, and variable. To understand what this means, let's talk about contingencies, essentially a rule or set of rules under which a reward is provided, the when and the how. Contingencies are arrangements of time, activity, and reward, so they will vary wildly with every game, and games are a combination of several contingencies. So, as previously mentioned, the most common moon type is worldly. They and the sub-area entrances employ a more variable contingency, meaning they're unpredictable. At first, there appears to be quite the variety of moon types and approaches. We never know what task we'll have to complete to obtain our next moon. The overall idea of worldly moons is to produce a constant probability of reward. This has a strong psychological effect. It's similar to systems like critical chance. It incentivizes damaging the enemy with crit chance attacks because the next hit may just trigger a critical hit. Similarly, the next hunt for loot may just grant the material needed. These are systems we take advantage of and don't pay mind to, but they can be addictive. It's simply human nature. The moons' constant probability incentivizes collection because the next one may just be around the corner and the task could be anything. They appear random, and the unexpectedness contributes because it allows us to ignore some of their placements. We're concentrating on that element of surprise factor. In addition, the objectives serve as marked moons to keep players' eyes on the prize. These moons are more fixed. They're expected and accompany the fixed ratio contingency of Fuel in the Odyssey. Fixed ratio is when there's a fixed amount of work the player has to do to gain a reward. There's an exact number of moons required before we're allowed to fly off to the next kingdom. This results in a high level of activity. We're working our way from objective to objective, obtaining moons along the way. It's easy to understand and follow. We need moons to proceed. The big bad is stealing the treasure, but more importantly, we'll obtain 3 moons for our Odyssey. Wow! Now, reward systems have their burnouts. Part of game design is taking advantage of this. For example, after completing a fixed ratio objective and flying out of a kingdom, that's the most likely time for a player to quit. It's a great place to stop. Odyssey could have added different content to compensate for this brief burnout, but just add more moons. However, this can also work in Odyssey's favor. Odyssey appears to be geared towards collecting a few moons, turning the game off, rinse and repeat. It's a cycle where the moons' reliable and variable nature grab the player, but also let them go whenever they want because of their low value and constant feedback. It makes it easy to grab a few forgettable moons, then quit without a care. This also works well when collecting a few moons on our way to an objective, then quitting once we hit said objective. This cycle also allows players to collect however many moons they want to collect in each kingdom beyond the required amount, and hence are satisfied without ever wanting to tackle the post-game or 100% the game. This is indeed why people love Mario Odyssey. Its entire goal is to grab and keep players' attentions for the short term. This means that this reward system does not have the longevity necessary to satisfy players who dive into the steep late or post-game burnout. However, this depends on when the player sees the moons for what they are, and many will quit before getting to that point due to the low moon requirements compared to the total available. For those who make it to that point, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, the constant moon feedback wears thin. Moons are bombastic rewards that devolve into questioning the required behavior. The longer you play, the more moon types you discover, the more they appear as repetitive and predictable, partially due to the gradual decline of the surprise factor, and it certainly doesn't help that some of the pre-post game and many of the post-game moons are copy and pasted into each and every kingdom. This is especially dangerous because the player may begin to think about the gameplay itself, which we'll be discussing throughout this series. So there you have it. This is why people love Mario Odyssey. Odyssey's demographic happens to be a quite large mainstream audience since moons employ unpredictability and surprise to grab and keep the player's attention for the supposed right amount of time, rather than promoting meaningful gameplay or the necessary longevity to provide the most satisfaction possible to the largest feasible crowd. I am convinced that Mario Odyssey succeeded at what it set out to do. Not to revolutionize 3D Mario, but to solely appeal to a mass audience of portable gamers who usually rely on mobile games, people who don't usually play games except for the odd Nintendo title from time to time, and 5-year-olds. I can confidently make this claim due to what I've discussed and the fact that Odyssey focuses entirely on a quantity over quality reward system and not much else, as we'll dive into. I hope this has shed some light on this pretty popular game, as some people don't seem to realize who this game was created for and what the consequence of this is beyond the broad strokes of isolating hardcore gamers for the sake of accessibility, as if the two crowds can't coincide, which is ridiculous. That's not an excuse I'll be using. My stance is that Odyssey could have been an even more enjoyable experience for everyone involved. Difficulty is not the only factor in a well-designed game. Accessibility is not an excuse when it can clearly coincide with even difficult games. Like I said, I'm hoping for everyone to be on the same page so we can examine Odyssey under its proposed ideas, such as the capture system and its new collectathon approach, and how those ideas were implemented in the game. Now, I want to establish a few more subsequent points to further lay some groundwork in what you can expect from this series. First of all, keep an open mind. Don't restrict your thoughts to Odyssey's narrow constraints. Let your imagination run wild. Imagine if helping a town recover or develop in some manner would reward you with new types of gameplay, whole new captures used extensively in the world, and an expanded kingdom to explore in. Now let's also imagine bosses implemented in the kingdoms themselves, like Seaside's Mr. Octopus. These suggestions are, in one way or another, expanding upon and capitalizing on what's already in Odyssey. But even if they weren't, we can all still try to have an open mind and think outside the box. There's an extraordinary amount of potential we could explore, so let's have some fun with it. 2. Moons should be valuable. Rewards that are meaningful to a player are more motivating. From what we went over in this episode, moons hold little value, yet can still prove meaningful for certain players due to their unpredictable placements and the saturation's short-term effectiveness. This means player motivation may or may not be there, and the moons may or may not be effective, but regardless, moons don't have the potential longevity that they could have. With that in mind, I'll be suggesting changes and improvements for, and sometimes outright removal of, individual moons. There's also a good amount of untapped potential regarding captures and bosses that tie into level design, progression, and overall gameplay that could significantly increase the moons' value. 3. Rewards should meet or exceed expectations. The representativeness heuristic is used when making judgments about the probability of an event under uncertainty. The more time, cost, and effort you put into an activity, there's a basic expectation that you'll receive more reward from it. It's a cognitive bias designers have to keep in mind. Currently, the utter lack of time, cost, and effort needed to obtain individual moons fits perfectly with their value. My foundation is the reduction of moons and how they should be valued enough to match the expectation that the gameplay should be providing. I want to raise the bar, not lower it. And 4, feedback on rewards should be provided as close to the behavior that the designers want to reward as possible. I'll be stepping through exactly what's required from the player for each moon. This includes effort, captures, progression, and level design. What are these moons trying to reward? Throughout this series, I hope to establish moons as a proper high-value reward, but more importantly, I aim to examine the process by which these moons are obtained. What exactly is required from the player throughout this game? This video serves to provide the foundation that I will base my analysis on. Yes, Odyssey succeeds at targeting the mass market and keeping them playing long enough to instill a positive impression, and then they'll quit all satisfied before the moons wear thin, but at the cost of gameplay, progression, effort, and overall game design that focuses on satisfaction through mechanics, systems, and level and world design, rather than an inflated, oversaturated, and devalued reward system that players tend to become apathetic towards or disappointed by the longer they play. Whether you enjoyed and had fun with Odyssey or not, I think it'd be pretty neat if we can all be on the same page and fully explore Super Mario Odyssey together. Cause I get lonely by myself.